Brother Omar Baruta should be approaching shortly. Lonnie Simmons, Jeffrey Steele. And today we're, as we promised last week, we're continuing our series on white supremacy. That sound okay, Brother Lonnie? Let's break it down. Let's not play with it. Yesterday, well, Sunday, as in yesterday, last Sunday, as in today. But let's talk about white supremacy, what it is and what it does. How we looking, Brother Talut? Okay. And last week we talked about, we defined white supremacy as a culmination of negative terms which had to do with racism, discrimination, prejudice, and all those words. Is that right, Brother Talut? And that's what we said. So today, let's start, as we promised. Last week we said we would start with the word power. The word power. And we have a document here. What do we do often? We have evidence. We have backup. We have a document of research that we can refer to. Is that right? That's what. Right. So we are not. Well, sometimes I throw my opinion in there, but we're not entirely opinion based. Is that right? Right. So here's what the authors say about power. They say power is control of or access to those institutions sanctioned by the state. Definition by Barbara Major of the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. And that place is in New Orleans, they say. I want to go back to you to start us off, Brother Talut. Can you concur or build on that, this definition of power that the young lady gives us? And does that sound like something that ties back into white supremacy?
Yes, absolutely. What we must understand is that a suppressed people's definition of power is totally different from the world's definition of power. Power, the actual effect of power is one who has the ability to execute their will. That's the definition of power. That's how the world operates with power. We don't do that as a people. We have no way of executing our will. So in fact, if we're going to call ourselves a people in relationship to people around the world, we're the only people on the planet Earth that cannot execute their will. In fact, having zero power.
Okay, let me read another statement, and this is from Dr. Wade Nobles, another prominent African-American scholar, if you will, teacher, psychologist. He says power is the ability, building on what you just said, Talut, the ability to define reality. You just spoke on reality. And to convince other people that it is their definition. Definition by Dr. Wade Nobles. Jeffrey, will you take that one?
Thank you. Definitely.
Glad to have you today. Yes.
Oh yeah, yes. Absolutely happy to be here.
Yes.
Was unhappy that I wasn't able to make it last week or wasn't able to see the show because of course, this is what we continue to deal with.
Yes.
Week to week.
Yes.
But definitely, they have the means to execute their will because they own and control the instruments and the tools to be able to display their propaganda to us on a mass level. And so that also goes into their power structure through media and newspapers and magazines, which we do not really have a large ownership of here. But also, I keep coming across this word will in these definitions of power that we have. And so the question becomes, well, what is a will? What are they talking about? Their will. This is something that they have defined for themselves as something that they feel that they want or desire, and they brought maybe even God into the picture and saying, well, that's what a manifest destiny is, their will to take over the world. So we don't have we defined the will for ourselves as saying that we have the same goal. And I think that plays into the whole idea of us not having power, is we haven't defined what it is that we want and what we desire.
Okay,
As a group.
Let's be clear. Let's be more specific.
That's correct.
We're talking about white supremacy in the United States of America. We're talking about African Americans, black people. I think that's sufficient at this point. And we're also referring to the dominant class. And I'm being nice
That's correct.
when I say the dominant class. So when I say the dominant class, we know who we're talking about, so-called white people. Is that right? Now, I want to read something, Lonnie. And it says that power is ownership and control of the major resources of a state and the capacity to make and enforce decisions based on this ownership and control. This is what this... So we have a compilation of definitions about power, and it sounds awfully powerful. Say something about what I just read in relationship to white supremacy. Let's break it down.
Let's break it down.
Yes.
Let's break it down in Tennessee.
All right.
They have land. They own the land here. So
White people.
the white people own
Okay.
the land here. And so by them owning the land, they own everything. And if we want to get into power, we're going to have to get land. And
African American.
African American. How to obtain that land, that's what we need to focus on, for one thing, because if you don't own land, you can't make too much rules, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you own land, you can have privatization on your land or whatever, but you can have, the police supposed to, you know, protect your land. If we can't own any land, then we can't
Okay.
we can't order our own protection, you know
Right.
what I'm saying? But that's just an example. But as far as the power, like I said, that's one of our resources. Food comes from the land.
Yes.
The cattle on the land. So
Yes.
we don't own any of that. That right there, they are marketing to us, and we're not getting anything. We're not gaining. So
Right.
I think we're gonna have to somehow.
Right. You're saying that you brought up three topics going down the road. And you're saying that African Americans are still the biggest consumers on the planet, called consumerism, which is a disease. You also brought up something about the role of the police. Going forward, we're going to talk about the origin of slavery and the police. That came up the other day. And you also brought up, we're going to talk more about how this group, Omar, something that we love to talk about, how they got their wealth. Is that right? Let me read. We've got a couple more things on this power thing, Omar. And I want to read, and I want you to help us with this, okay? Power is the capacity of a group of people to decide what they want and to act on and organize and get to it. Power, a group of people. Decide what they want, get organized, and act on it. And get it done. Help us out. Let me read this next one. And go get into it for us. Okay? This next one says, in terms of an individual, power is the capacity to act. Capacity. That word, capacity. What do you say?
You know, we had the term back in the 60s, black power.
Mm-hmm.
And the power that we referred to was the ability to cause white folks a period of discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we were singing We Shall Overcome, which was written by a Jew.
Okay. That's nice to know.
They were happy with us singing and marching. But when America caught fire after Dr. King's assassination by the United States government, then they felt like these black folk have some power that we got to deal with. America has power, and white folks in general, not just the American white folks, but the white folks that crawled out of the cave originally, they have power all over the earth. It was one senator that said 194 countries on earth, America has a military base of some kind in 130 of them, and they are not there by invitation. I just heard Mr. Farrakhan say yesterday that there are over 1,000 military bases that circle the globe. So they got plenty of power to go in and take what they want at whatever price they want to take it, pay for it, or get it for free. And the people there are so dominated they cannot fight back. That's power. Black folk don't have that kind of power yet, because you got to have unity in order to have power. And we are too disunited to come together and let them see our power.
I see. So, see, he made the statement about the individual, and you just brought up the term unity.
Yes.
So, big unity as opposed to the individual. The individual as opposed to, it seems to me that the individual should be teaching, organizing. Go ahead.
Look at the war we just got out of in Iraq. 2,978 people died at the World Trade Center based on the American government blowing it up, or some element of the government blowing it up. And there were people who didn't think anything about Iraq, Iran, or any of those Islamic countries. But because of the lie that they told, they galvanized the people. First, they united those people behind that lie. Then they galvanized the people to go and murder other people who had done nothing to us in the first place. That's power.
Yes.
And then everything they could pull out of the hat, every bomb, bullet, and rocket that they could pull out of the hat, they shot it at that country innocently. Innocent people died. And then we don't even apologize. In fact, that's the ultimate insult. Is when you go and attack somebody who's done nothing to you, and then when you victimize them, you don't even apologize for what you did.
Talut, racism, once again. Here's what the document says. The document says racism is race prejudice plus power, a definition by the People's Institute. And the author says, I use white supremacy as a synonym for racism. Now, and I think this should tie to the next statement. Let me get on into internalized racism here. Talk about that in reference to African Americans and how we respond to racism. It says that internalized racism, the poison of racism, seeping into the psyches of people of color, until people of color believe about themselves what whites believe about them, that they are inferior to whites, the behavior of one's person of color toward another that stems from his psychic poisoning, often called interracial hostility. This acceptance by persons of color of Eurocentric values. And here's a group of people who have done extensive research on what they're talking about. Go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah, white supremacy and racism are synonymous. There's no question about that. You can't have one without the other.
Okay.
Okay. But to make white supremacy more palatable, they teach us in our schools and learning institutions and society
These European schools.
Racism.
Okay.
Instead of saying you are practicing white supremacy, we in turn use their word that was given to us. You are practicing racism. That's a mild way. That's an extremely mild way to talk about the ugly, human destructive power of white supremacy. Now, who's unique on the planet and able to destroy white supremacy? We are. The black American man and woman has the wherewithal to destroy white supremacy. If we decide to execute our will. We've not decided to execute our will, so white supremacy raged around the planet, destroying millions, if not billions, of human lives. God Almighty gave us a duty, a job, a responsibility on this planet. And it is not partying. It is not making love with each other. It is not checking the body of the woman. It is not eating. It is not sleeping. It's destroying white supremacy.
That's right. That's
We
right.
must give our lives to that.
Okay.
That's why we're born. That's why we're put on the planet. To kill something, an ideal, a concept that has destroyed billions of people's lives for 6,000 years.
Okay. All right. No, one more statement. Go ahead.
One more statement.
You want to clamp it. Go ahead and put the clamp on it.
We must orientate ourselves. We must unify ourselves around one principle, and one principle alone:
That's right.
the destruction of white supremacy.
Okay.
Now, if we do that,
Okay.
if we just wake up in the morning and say, you know, we have to destroy white supremacy, we're unified. And 40 million people are capable of executing their will. And that's power. Until then, we're dealing with quasi-power,
Okay.
pseudo-power.
Yeah, we've brought up several subjects to keep us busy for the next 2 or 3 months. Lonnie, you brought will into the equation, and Brother Talut broke it down for us. He expounded and expanded on it. Now here is, Jeffrey, reverse racism. Listen to this. It is a term, according to these authors, that was created and used by white people to deny their white privilege. Those in denial use the term reverse racism to refer to hostile behavior by people of color towards whites, and to affirmative action policies, which allegedly give preferential treatment to people of color over whites. In the U.S., there is no such thing as reverse racism. What do you say to that, Jeffrey?
I like the idea. I would not run from the concept of even, if they want to define it and they want to place the idea or try to hide or say that it's negative, think about it. It's reverse racism. Even if it's reverse racism, what's the problem? Yes, I'm unapologetically that. I don't see the problem. I think the way that they defined it, since it's their definition, I guess they're trying to imply that we have the power to discriminate against them, which is not the case. The case is, if that term is going to be there, I think that we should define it as that's what we ought to be doing, is reversing racism. So that's how I see that term. Now, I do think that they use that in a way to nullify our efforts to destroy white privilege. But like my brother just said, that is our task, and that's what our will should be. So to be a reverse racism, to be a reverse racist, I think that's what we should strive to be, actually.
Okay, so if you're African American, you define definitions perhaps differently from the Supremists. And so there's an opposing point of view, and we totally disagree with the white supremacists that there's such thing as white supremacists. And so therefore, when we come to the debate, we must be courageous enough to redefine and reverse this so-called reverse racism. Because it is absolute. And what happens is that as these white supremacists, and they come in all shapes and forms, and sometimes they are all dressed up there and been to the beauty parlor and all that, and still they're white supremacists. And so, let's get to what a racist is, Lonnie. A racist is one who is both privileged and socialized on the basis of race by a white supremacist racist system. The term applies to all white people, people of European descent, living in the United States, regardless of race, gender, religion, culture, sexuality. By this definition, people of color cannot be racist, because as people within the United States system, they do not have the power to back up their prejudice, hostilities, or acts of discrimination. This does not deny the existence of such prejudices, hostilities, and acts of rage or discrimination. I think Talut said that African Americans have the power to define their own reality as interpretation, but we are simply not doing that. Talk about a racist, Lonnie.
I think a racist is, like you said, someone who acts on that definition as to superior and inferior races. For example, you know, a white student, whatever age, you know, they can be racist and not necessarily be prejudiced, if you understand, because it has to do with privileges and you being able to obtain privileges specifically on your race, you know. And a lot of white people, you know, their argument is, well, I don't hate black people, how can I be racist?
I have one black friend.
I had one black friend, or my mom and dad, they didn't own slaves, you know, how can I be racist? But they neglect to bring up the reality that there's privileges that they're able to obtain specifically or just because of their white.
Right.
You know,
I've had a couple of so-called white people tell me they've gotten things simply because of the color of their skin.
just because.
I've also had white people to tell me, and we know this, that they have no idea of what's really going on. That they've been hoodwinked as well. They have no idea that they're racist. So therefore, African Americans, us sitting at this table, we have to educate the entire world about this, the devastating effects of this white supremacy.
And it runs so deep because sometimes I think even our own people can be white supremacists because it's a concept, it's a conditioning that white people are better than you, and if you believe that, then you are white supremacist because you agree with their ideology, maybe subconscious or, you know, not aware that you know.
Well, yeah, that's called, one of the authors pointed out that there are African Americans who internalize racism detrimentally to their own being and the being of their people. Omar, we are down to 6 minutes. Let's move quickly. A non-racist, a non-term, they say. The term was created by whites to deny responsibility for systemic racism, to maintain an aura of innocence in the face of racial oppression, and to shift responsibility for their oppression from whites to people of color. Called blaming the victim, and we've heard of that. Responsibility for perpetuating and legitimatizing a racist system rests both on those who actively maintain it and on those who refuse to challenge it. Silence is consent, something you referred to, Len. Omar Baruti.
Before I go into answer that question, I want to read you a text I just got from Natasha Zanaku.
Okay.
She said, when black people regain the power of their minds from the propaganda and the programming of mutants, they will move forward. Mm-hmm. And she calls these people mutants, the so-called white people, because they are a mutation of black people.
Okay.
From 6,000 years ago. That's scientifically documented. Mm-hmm. That's why they use mutants in laboratory experiments, the white rabbit, because they don't occur naturally, and they are mutations of the natural. Mm-hmm. But to answer the question,
yes,
all white people that I know of, and I haven't seen one yet, but if you see one, take a picture. All white people I know of are racist, intrinsically or otherwise.
So take a picture.
Please take a picture.
Okay.
I need to see it.
Okay.
I don't know what it looks like.
You okay?
In corporate America, is permeated with that kind of attitude and mentality. I have trained people to be my boss. Uh-huh. And they'll constantly ask me how to do something that I trained them to do. But they're qualified to boss me now. Mm-hmm. And it's not just in the corporate level, but it's throughout the entire fabric of America. Mm-hmm. It's permeated with racism and the mentality of white supremacy. Before Obama took office, there were somewhere, in the National Poverty Law Center, there were somewhere around 602 white supremacist groups. Now there's over 1,000 in this country. That mentality permeates Congress. It permeates the little man on the bottom floor of white supremacy. It permeates everywhere.
Okay. There's an author, his last name is Silver. It's saying, he talks about the new racism. And we've heard Michelle Alexander talk about the new Jim Crow. So therefore, we've got to keep abreast on all of these new things. He also goes on to say that African Americans are still paying more for cars, paying more for houses. They are still paying more for everything. And we've got two more terms I want to get to. But he goes into, and this is very interesting, it's very insightful. It goes into how it's done because there's a network of white supremacy. And they're in charge, and they're the ones showing African Americans around outside of that network. It's what I call a silent agreement. You don't have to have a meeting about it. It's a silent agreement, and they end up paying more for everything. You know, forget redlining. That is super redlining today. Brother Talut, let me read a couple of more statements, and let's go into them. What is an anti-racist as applied to white people? An anti-racist is a person who makes a conscious choice to act to challenge some aspect of the white supremacist system, including his or her own white privilege, as well as some form of oppression against people of color, as applied to people of color. Some use the term anti-racist. Others use some synonyms such as freedom fighter, activist, warrior, liberation fighter, political prisoner, prisoner of war, sister, brother, etc. In practice, it is difficult for an activist of color not to be an anti-racist activist, since the struggle against racial oppression intersects with every issue affecting people of color. And we've said that white supremacy is interwoven throughout this society. United States of America. Take it.
Yeah. White colonization of which the white supremacist masters, okay, they've colonized people all over the planet. Yet we think that we've never been colonized. That's the success of colonization. You feel normal. You feel like everything the white supremacists do is okay. In fact, you look toward the white supremacists as the ultimate decision maker. It's sort of like, you know, if we can put this in perspective, an abused wife in the presence of her abused husband expressing how she feels about abuse. Yeah. That's what we do. We use the language, we use all of these principles. We intellectualize the effect of their white supremacy acts upon us.
I love him. I love my master.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
I am a Muslim. Okay? Brother Baruti and others. You. Okay. We all are. If you are a liberator, a true liberator, and you refuse to use passive language in expressing your effort to liberate your people, then basically you're a Muslim. You just haven't said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. You haven't said that in your open.
But the essence of freedom, liberation, and goodness is there.
Look,
emanating from the depths of one's soul is what I hear you saying.
Yes.
Okay.
When you are forceful and you use forceful language, you are a man, you're a woman. You're not looking for all this stuff to intellectualize our condition. You want to destroy it. You want to kick white supremacists dead in the ass. You want to kill it. You want to murder it. You want to drive the javelin in its heart.
So you want to.
So how you going to do that? Please, may I?
Right.
Okay. You're a racist. You're not a racist. Can we just get along? No. We have to kill this thing. It's a beast. It's Shaitan. It's the devil. We have to kill it.
All right. So you're saying cut right to it. Get right to it. Jeffrey, I've got something that we can talk very strongly about, and that is oppression. That is oppressed. Oppressor, oppression, and oppression. All right? Now it says an oppressor is one who uses his or her power to dominate another, or one who refuses to use his or her power to challenge that domination. Now I hear what you're saying. It is an oppressed is one who is dominated by an oppressor. and by those who consent with their silence. Oppression is the power and effects of domination. In the U.S., there are many forms of often interlocking oppressions: racism, sexism, classism, heterosexism, and over anti-Semitism, ableism, and ageism. I like this ableism. In other words, going back to capacity, you have the capacity, you're able. There are those out there talking about they want to knock down your ability. Oh no. Come on, Jeffrey.
And I absolutely agree, brother. And what you previously just said, but oppression is the effect. And I think you just read that. It is an effect. It is the effect of them controlling us, or it's the
them
effect,
as in the oppression, the white
Europeans,
supremacists.
the white supremacists controlling
let's be clear. Let's be
African people
specific.
around the globe, and the effect causes apathy amongst our people, and it also causes learned hopelessness. But like my brother was just saying, is once we stand up and we define what our will is, and put the emphasis on acting and doing, because acting and doing is what is going to reverse white supremacy. We can't sit back and do nothing, otherwise we're consenting. We're playing along with it. We're letting it to continue.
Yeah, they're talking about silence and consenting.
Correct.
With your silence
and that's also an effect
and your lack of action. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's also an effect of oppression.
Mm-hmm.
Oppression is what holds us down, and what holds us down mentally in a way to where we cannot unite, and we cannot define what our problem is, and we cannot define what our solutions or what our course of action should be. But I think our brother just handled that for us. So if you were paying attention earlier,
yes.
he went down. Our will is to destroy racism, white supremacy. And if you're not doing that, you are off your task.
Yes. Let's take a look at this thing that grew out of this last presentation that the two of you gave. El-Amin. It's a terrible thing. You talked about apathy, hopelessness. Lonnie, is apathy and hopelessness that is wrapped up in El-Amin, that is detrimental to African Americans, and I think that's something that you pointed out all along. Say a few words about that. We're up against the clock, and real quickly, let's move quick with the quickness, Omar, and then I'll close it out.
I just wanted to say, with that effect, especially with the oppression, we have to break out of that trance, because that's what it is. We're in a trance, and whether we fail to acknowledge it or not, the reality is it affects us every day, everywhere we go, where you go to eat, whether you choose not to go out to eat. It has its effects around us, and if we are not conscious, if we're not waking our people up and making them conscious to that, well, we can act upon it, because a lot of our people are out here asleep, and we're out here
walking sleep?
Yeah, we're
walking around sleep?
Yeah, we're worried about
walking around at the mall, sleep?
The newest episode on whatever TV shows, they even got fake reality shows out here that we think that's real, because it's on the,
your eyes are wide shut?
Right, wide shut. So if we can just make it extra effort, whatever you do to make somebody else conscious of that, so we can all then wake up and say, hey, this is what we need to stay on task for, so that's what we have to do.
You said extra effort. Now, Omar, oppressed, oppressor, oppression, hopelessness, apathy tied into that. Tell us something hard-hitting, and then we're going to get ready for next week's show.
I go to some of the most hopeless people in America. I got two prison ministries, one in Whiteville and one up in Henning, Tennessee. And my job is to wake them up as to how they got there and what they need to do when they get out of there. I have got to wake them up. It's not just in the streets of America, but we got 2.3 million black men locked up in the prisons of America. And we got to wake everybody up. If we're going to get something done in this country, we got to wake people up. That's the first task we have.
Okay. All right, we've come to the end of another interesting, exciting, and informative show. And we say that, let's go back to Kwame Ture. The people must be organized. And we've just brought out something today that's not new. They must be educated as well. And thank you for listening, for tuning in. Thank you, brothers, for being here and being a part of the panel. And we will see you next week. And let's get to the subject matter. Theme song, Love Power, by Willie Hutch.